fire. I mean,
we'll have to do a different episode about septic and yawning while it's allowed.
There's a whole other week before the next council meeting, so we could talk about this.
He was like, dude, you were like a priest. Like, seriously, from the camera, when we were talking in Brigade.
Yeah, that was legendary. Like the tubes and everything.
He was missing was the right vehicle. It was so funny. It was such an emotionally exhausting night.
Yeah.
And it was like 4 hours later, most of the room had cleared out.
Yeah.
Before public comment happened. The council members are exhausted. I get up to talk. I give this speech.
Why not cry your eyes out already?
Usually, I don't know why they didn't do it. I think because they knew so many people were in the room for CalTrans, but they wanted to talk about CalTrans and they hated public comments. So anyway, I had, especially with Danny speaking, I was talking about something together tanks, which usually I think are a very important topic for ReBUild, but just didn't seem important that night. And everybody was so exhausted. And I start my speech, and at one point I look up at Halen for the first time. She's literally stifling a yawn. And I'm like, please don't yawn.
Yeah.
It's going.
Let's go on.
Yeah. All right, guys. Episode 15. Keegan Gibbs in the house.
Yes, welcome.
Welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Keegan, for the audience, just maybe share a little bit about, obviously, you're a very famous guy in Malibu.
Absolutely famous. Yeah.
Share a little bit about yourself.
I grew up out here for the most part. I was born out in the valley. Moved out here when I was about 7. Surfer, artist, made documentary films. And then the Woolsey fire happened and kind of totally changed my life in terms of what I wanted to do with it and what meant something to me. And ended up kind of steering me into kind of creating the community brigade with a few of my friends. Well, I think the concept of brigades has been around for a really long time. There was the Malibu West Brigade, which kind of started, I think, around 2010-ish. And I mean, the idea of like staying and defending has been part of the fabric and culture of Malibu for a really long time in terms of ranch hands and stuff kind of just looking out after their own. And I think I've always tried to carry that in the ethos of what I wanted to do post Woolsey, even before the concept of the formal community brigade. So yeah, it's just been, I think, kind of like it's been ingrained in the culture of Malibu for a really long time. So just trying to turn it into a more formal program as opposed to just neighbors whispering, "Hey, fill up your trash cans with water and do X, Y, and Z." Okay, how do we formalize this thing? Create something more where we turn people into assets as opposed to liabilities during fire. So.
And where were you for Woolsey, and what was your experience?
I was actually living in Topanga with my family at the time, and my parents lived on Point Doom, and they lost their place on Point Doom. And myself and a bunch of my friends kind of were running around during Woolsey with garden hoses and shovels and driving around in our trucks and thinking we were doing kind of the Lord's work and thinking we're kind of the thought we were cool shit. So looking back, I think we did very little, but at the time it meant a lot to us. So sure.
Were you the one coordinating those shipments of like from the boats?
My friends and I,
all of that.
Yeah. I think
What was that? Like shipments from the boat?
the roads were closed, and I think the first thing that came in was actually a bunch of gas, and then a generator and a Pelican case with a bunch of radios. Like on the second day, and we paddled out in surfboards, grabbed that stuff from a friend of ours' little boat. Literally paddling a generator on top of a surfboard, battling in at down Curtis Cove, and then that turned into like a huge kind of circus down there with this whole like people shuttling, trying to come in to see their houses and stuff.
And some people were stealing stuff, and you guys were controlling them, or
stealing stuff. Yeah, I mean, there's looting in all these big fires. Unfortunately, we definitely saw some of it during the Woolsey fire, but much about like security. We weren't really patrolling for security. It was more around just initially in the first couple of days, just looking for hot spots and going around structures and stuff, and then it kind of turned into this almost like a community emotional support network that we had set up down at the Point Doom Elementary School. Where we had all this food and supplies and gas. I think we had, at some point had like more than a few hundred gallons of gas in there in cans. We had a little gas station where people were pulling in and we were filling up people's cars with gas and stuff. So, it was more about like having a hub of emotional support for the community more than just like the firefighting aspect. I think that was an important part.
you go.
No, since 2018, I'm just wondering, you guys have obviously advanced in your organization and in your structure and your capabilities. What has that sort of timeline been like?
A journey.
Yeah, it's been a lot. I mean, is there other stuff you guys want to cover first? I feel like you're opening up a big can of worms here.
Sometimes
It just
We
happens.
know what the
Yeah.
main, the most important topic should be, and fire safety is it, and you guys are a big part of that. So.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, like, look, I had no intention of being part of creating something like this. It was never like the first day of Woolsey. It wasn't like, oh, let's create a formal program and join forces with LA County. And there was so much resentment towards the fire department at the time. Yeah. And I mean, I was one of those people, and I've said multiple times that when Chief Osby and LA County did their first big community meeting down at City Hall, I was in the front row, and I remember standing up and yelling at Osby's face, who was the chief at the time, saying, "You just need to say sorry." And that was based on a lot of misperceptions I had around the capability of first responders and the entity of all fire departments as they respond to big incidents, and actually what the needs are of the community and the capabilities to be able to meet major disasters like that. So,
Which we've seen too, right? I mean,
yeah,
anytime a chief shows up to a community meeting from February until now, several people just scream at him.
yeah,
Like, what the hell? You didn't do your job. You didn't save my house. You didn't save our neighborhood. And it's misperceptions. I mean, a lot of people think fire departments, it's their job to save property. Well, that's not the primary job. The primary job is save life, right? So if nobody's in the neighborhood, firefighters aren't risking their own lives to save property unnecessarily. And learning that is difficult because you just lost your whole neighborhood.
So let
but
me
they need
ask
to
you-
realize this maxim.
Along
and how
those
they're
lines-
learning it.
Along those lines, maybe let me ask a little bit of a controversial question. So fast forward to Jan 7, 2025. Would you guys say that the fire department did all they could?
my attitude is yes. Yeah, look, I think no matter what, you'll be able to look back and point fingers, and this is what could have been done better. And I think that's part of hindsight being 2020, is that there's always something you can do better. There's a lot. Me personally could have done better post or during the Palisades fire. And I know the fire department does the same thing. They do their big AERs and go, ooh, we could have done this better. We could have done this better. We'll do this better. I think that question is loaded because there's this false perception that there's going to be a fire truck in every driveway. And I think that the culture in Malibu post Woolsey has changed to what the realities are, to accept that reality that can't happen, not even close, right? And one of the stats I always like to point out was during the Woolsey fire, 250,000 people were evacuated, right? And which is the largest, I think, evacuation in LA County history, or I think maybe in the country for overall
Span of hours?
24 hours.
24 hours,
right?
yeah.
And so 250,000 people were evacuated. There was around 1,500 or something 911 calls in the first 36 hours. And in the initial response, there's about 250 fire engines.
This was during Woolsey?
Woolsey.
Woolsey. Oh, wow.
And that 250 fire engines, that's a immense response. That is a huge response that you're not going to see anywhere else in the world to be able to respond in that initial attack phase. And then you start getting into the intricacies of how departments work with mutual aid, right? Because when there's a fire in LA County, they pull resources from Ventura and Orange County and LA City and Santa Barbara and San Diego. But when there's winds everywhere from Northern California all the way down to the border in San Diego, every city and every county has their own threat. And so they can't just surge all their resources up to here, because if there's a fire that breaks out in Orange County or a fire breaks out in Santa Barbara, those resources can't be saving a house and go, ooh, there's a fire up in Santa Barbara. We're out. They're committed to that place. So yeah, it was 250,000 people evacuated, 1,500-ish 911 calls, 200 fire engines. And that's not, nobody wants to quadruple their taxes, right? To be able to 4X the capability of response. But even if you 4X that's maybe we get 800 engines. It's the same fire. It's the same result, right? Especially when there's such a high risk for life loss.
What were the stats for Palisades?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm sure it's in one of the AARs. But
Do you think we evacuated fewer people for the Palisades fire than the Woolsey fire?
That's a good question.
And Malibu and Altadena. You're all in mono, right?
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're counting out the data for sure. But I think in the Woolsey fire, because you had the whole Conejo Valley, right? You had Thousand Oaks, Westlake. You had all the way to Topanga Canyon, all the way to Camarillo, basically. The entire San Juan Mountains, pretty much.
Woolsey fire, in terms of extent, it was 4 times bigger than the Palisades fire.
Yeah, Palisades was 25,000 acres, which
96,000.
in Woolsey was about 100,000. And
Concentrated, though. Concentrated in terms of numbers.
and I always say that,
density.
yeah, and Eaton and Palisades fire, and this is a new kind of terminology that people are starting to understand, is those weren't necessarily wildland fires, right? Like Eaton fire specifically started in the wildland, but it was an urban fire, right? It within 20 minutes, that was inside of the urban fabric, burning structures, and there was no wildland there. It was a very clear demarcation between the city and the brush. And as soon as it went into the city, there was no brush in the city there. And it was just burning structure to structure like that. So,
And they're calling that now, the new terminology is what? Urban conflagration.
urban conflagration. Yeah.
Which is, there's all these buildings that are too close. They burn longer and hotter than plants would have. And so it's a much more ferocious fire. And so firefighting departments, and I mean, I'll say it and maybe people will disagree, but what I've heard and what I've learned is LA has the best firefighters in the world, right? People from around the world learn from LA how to handle fire, how to manage fire, because LA is the best. We have the most people, the most talent, the most experience.
And the most complex terrain.
That's going to be tough for, obviously the fire victims to hear and appreciate.
It is, but I mean, my family everybody here, we're all fire victims, and I'll be the first to say it. LA is the best, and we were helped by the best.
Unfortunately, that, Darren. Why would you say that?
The reason why they're the best is because they have the most complex amount of situations they have to deal with. Everything from wildland fires to earthquakes to EMS calls from, grandma having a heart attack to landslides, etc. And they're also one of the largest budgets for a fire department in the world, right? And so they have a very dynamic training, and they also have some of the best apparatus in the world. They were one of the pioneers of the Firehawk, which is the Black Hawk that's been converted to Firehawk.
Let me maybe double click on that for just a second. Because of that reason, because they have to be good at so many different things, does that make them less good at any one thing? In other words, if they are
not a master of one. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. And I'll precurse, I think, this whole conversation with saying I'm not an expert. I'm a resident that wanted to learn more, and I'm still learning every day. I became obsessed with this stuff. It was something that after Woolsey, I said, okay, I don't want this to happen again. Why did it happen to me after going through many fires in Malibu, thinking it would never happen again? I always thought, it'll never cross PCH. It'll never burn Point Doom because of fire. How could it cross PCH?
80 feet of asphalt.
Yeah.
Fires are going that far. We thought that too.
Yeah.
That's never coming across. We had a hillside of Big Rock Mesa, all that brush on it. My parents and I, we discussed it. What is the threat to our house? Flood. That's the only thing we ever considered. Then this fire comes and changes everybody's perception on 180 degrees. Yeah. And now everyone's like, well, fire's the biggest threat. Flood, maybe. Fire, definitely.
I remember during the Franklin fire in December, it crossed PCH briefly right around Pepperdine, where that new development is by Bluffs Park.
Yeah.
And that was shocking. But they put it out. They put it out quickly.
But the Woolsey fire had already crossed not only PCH, but also the 101, which is even wider than PCH.
And
the fire spot, like under those conditions, Woolsey was spotting 1, 2, 3 miles. And so a freeway means nothing. Yeah. It means nothing, and you've learned some of that in the training and stuff. So
I have two kind of loaded questions. Going back to Woolsey fire, when we were talking about emotional support, right? How do you see the city compared both cases? Like, because you were very involved during Woolsey, I don't know how involved you were in the city's response. So what is your opinion on that? And then how is your view, and this is more personal, you said that you changed your view about the authority, right? Like at the beginning you were shouting at the fire department, and now you kind of join them. So I think that's something that we're kind of doing. We were very critical at the beginning, and now we've always tried to work with the city to improve the processes, but this kind of mindset switch into complaining to authority and what things can improve with you working with them.
The question. Yeah, I got you. So I think there's a lot of misperceptions again about the role of a local city in a disaster. The city is not the fire department. The city has very little responsibility in terms of changing the outcome of a fire, right? The fire department, which is a county program, they're the ones that issue the evacuation and the perimeters, and they're the ones that are there for the suppression and the protection and all that stuff. I think that, especially during Woolsey, I think there was a lot of frustration towards the city and the city manager at the time. And I was one of those people that was frustrated for sure. But then I understood what their role was more. I was like, oh, so they couldn't have done anything better that would have prevented my house from burning down.
Well, the city's more about the recovery though. So
yeah, I mean, recovery is a tricky one because, look, I mean, my parents' house burned down, right? Woolsey, and they're in the permitting process still. So, but I can't put all the blame on the city because they were 80% underinsured by State Farm. So they had to wait to sue State Farm to get some money. They had to wait for that Edison. They still don't have enough money now at the modern building cost, which is basically more than doubled what it was right when Woolsey happened, to be able to even rebuild. So I think that it's a really complex set of inputs to be able to say I personally, for my family situation, can't put the blame on one person. And I can't. Yeah, of course, the permitting process is notoriously really tough in Malibu, and they've had their own issues. My parents had their own issues with dealing with the city of Malibu, but I can't put all the blame on them. I can't put all the blame on my parents. Or
So far, you feel that there's similar reaction, a bit better now, or it's too soon to?
I'm honestly just not familiar with what's going on right now with the city with the rebuild. I guess I haven't been super involved with.
It's worse.
I mean, part of the reason we're asking is initially the city said, we learned from Woolsey. We learned the pitfalls of our process, and none of you Palisades rebuilders will have to deal with that mess. And what we're seeing is it's kind of the exact same, if not more convoluted. And so it's slow and painful, and
Yeah, I think what
not everybody will be able to do it.
I think what began happening is they were starting to overcorrect for some of the mistakes potentially that were made early on in trying to go quickly during Woolsey, and that bogged things down. So
I don't want to.
I also saw people that took advantage of the system in Woolsey, and
Yeah.
they got hyper focused on not having that hedge.
Yeah, I also have a problem saying any fire survivors take advantage. Yeah, in any sense, rebuilding their house. I mean, I think what happened was we had a somewhat functional building department after Woolsey, and then policy decisions started influencing. You already said how expensive it is to build to modern code. Okay, that's a hurdle. But then you have policymakers saying, well, now hold on, we don't want this type of development. We don't want somebody adding a bedroom, God forbid. We don't want X, Y, and Z. So they purposely put a cap on everything, which slowed it down, which has been maintained through today, and it's causing people a lot of problems.
Yeah, most of that stuff's over my head.
That's fine.
I started digging with my parents, trying to see if I could help them out, because I could see how
And
slow it
for a
was.
fire victim that has lost his or her house, that has lost their house, if they want to build back something better,
Yeah.
It's an incentive. It's an incentive. Oh, I can take my 3-bedroom house to a 4-bedroom house. Okay, now I'm motivated. Now I'm encouraged. I'm going to get out of this trauma. I have something to look forward to. I have something that's going to get me through to the other side. I think that is something to support. We have not seen that from our policymakers in this city, which is a shame.
Yeah, I wish I just knew better. I could speak up. It's not even me pointing back away from politics. I know it's a really complex
Let's
situation.
maybe talk about the Community Brigade, a fantastic organization. You got, 2 about to be graduates, or are you guys already graduates?
we finished. Yeah.
Two finished. Congratulations.
Got our licenses, and so
That's what I don't care about, but
Another one of the graduates at the last spot, Josh. Did he pass? Did he pass?
Yeah.
That's so.
It is baptized, yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about how you guys are preparing for the next calamity that at some point might befall us.
More preparation and mitigation. I think that these guys heard it in our last weekend. Is that the firefighting parts? The dirty yellows and the kind of playing with the fire hose stuff. That's the Trojan horse for actually doing the mitigation work.
I see.
And whether that is in existing structures, going out and doing the assessments and encouraging people to get rid of their vulnerabilities, do the 0 to 5 and vent screening and all that stuff, and the vegetation management, or it's in rebuilds, making sure when people rebuild, they're rebuilding in a way that is going to prevent their house from burning down again. And that's, like, to me, the hands down the most important work that we can do is that prevention stuff, because there's only so many houses that you can actually save during an incident, as we were just talking about with the lack of resources to meet the needs of a major incident. Whereas if we have a fire every 6 years, pretty much in Malibu, that destroys houses. And if we spend our time, now we have about 100 brigade members, if every brigade member focused on 5 to 10 houses from now until for 6 years, and they actually encourage their neighbors, their 10 neighbors, to actually do that work, and they actually do that mitigation, we're talking anywhere from 500 to 1,000 houses now.
That might be the difference.
That's a huge difference. You'll never ever be able to save.
Burning down.
You'll never be able to save 1,000 houses with firefighters.
Prevention. So you guys are squarely focused on prevention. So it's not so much when a fire is coming, then you guys are going to jump in your suits and then try to fight the fire so much. It is more the work in advance of that, and the fact that you are part of the community, that there would be more receptivity.
Absolutely. I always talk about how if Chief Drew Smith, our assistant chief of the area, if he came and knocked on my parents' door the day before Woolsey and said, "Hey, buddy, my name's Chief Drew Smith. I'm the most respected fire behavior analyst in the country, and there's potentially gonna be a really big fire tomorrow. It's about as bad as it gets. I suggest you move all that firewood next to your house." I would have probably shut the door in his face, right? Because I didn't know him at the time, and it was just somebody with a badge. And whereas if my neighbor, or like Tim Bigelow, one of the our community elders, I like to say, came and knocked on my door and said, "Hey, Keegan, I've seen these conditions before. This looks bad. Let's move that firewood." I would have said, "Okay, cool. Tell me where to put it."
I mean, I would argue that, community education is our biggest strength, and that's what I want to do. I want to help the most through community education. The, Zone 0, WUI or UE guidelines that now everybody has reacted to all summer long in the Palisades, in Altadena, and in Malibu, anywhere where the wildlands urban interface is defined. everyone's gut reaction is screw that, because it's coming down from the top, from a stranger, from the Department of Forestry. But if we're going around advising our neighbors and our friends, hey, there are these rules that exist, and we advise that you follow them. So get rid of all your plants within 5
So you
feet.
mentioned zone
within
zero for
30
the audience, for the audience that aren't as plugged in. Define zone zero for it, right?
It's my understanding is zone 0 is the 0 to 5 feet within the perimeter of your house, which could currently, if you don't clear it out, have ember entraining material, which will hold an ember and then light a fire, and that fire can then take.
And the 5 feet begins from the end of your overhang or from the
Clear to scale or
It's end of overhang. It's end of overhang, and that includes appendages. So if you have a big deck, it would actually be 5 feet out from the edge of the deck as well.
5 feet out from the edge of the deck. So 5 feet away from any structure
Yeah.
as seen from the top?
as seen from the top.
Yeah.
Okay, aerial view.
And look, and that's a really, it's a contentious issue, right? Because there's a lot of people that are against it because of aesthetic reasons. There's a lot of HOAs and developers that don't want it because you have communities that are built right on top of each other, and the only vegetation they can put in is between.
You gotta have a hedge.
You gotta have a hedge for privacy, right?
Privacy.
And I get it, and I don't have the answer to that. I've been a part of a lot of the meetings. I'm a huge believer in the science of where the 0 to 5 came from. That being said, the flats, the Palisades, where the alphabet streets are, et cetera, that whole area. Even if Zone 0 existed and nobody had 0 to 5 combustibles in the 0 to 5 foot zone, a majority of that whole area was lost from structure to structure because of high density, not because of people had a bunch of lavender in that 0 to 5 foot zone. And so even if those were, you saw concrete blocks that were built in the last 5 years in the Alphabet Streets areas that were demolished, right? Because it was that radiant heat or direct flame impingement. When you only have a 10-foot setback from wall to wall to your neighbor, a hedge is not going to be the issue. It's going to be your neighbor's house burning down.
Which speaks directly to, are you rebuilding correctly?
Yeah.
Because if your neighbor is not 20 feet away, everybody on the south side of PCH, none of our neighbors are 20 feet away. What your neighbor does will affect what your house how it reacts during a fire. So you really can only defend your stuff with your materials, your walls, your roof, the underside of your house. What is that made of? Is it 1 hour fire resistant, 2 hour fire resistant, or is it,
So it's basically
gonna burn.
You're as strong as the weakest link of your block.
And so like PCH, for example, like by Moon Shadows, that whole strip that ended up burning, there was a ton of resources down there. I drove PCH probably up and down there at least 5 times that night on the 7th. And there was water the whole time as well. And there was a lot of structural protection going on down there. And there's really nothing you can do when there's in those conditions, the structures are so huge, they're putting out so much heat and intensity for so long. You have to literally treat every house on PCH as almost one structure. Because as soon as you lose one, you're losing the next one, and it's a domino effect.
Can I ask a specific question since you were there that night?
Yeah.
Was it the easternmost house caught and then it spread quickly, or was it multiple houses catching all of
Just like whack-a-mole, kind of, it was like one house here, one house there, one house there. But
because the embers were flying in from the mountains? Is that why it was happening?
yeah, and I have video of it that, it was literally millions of embers rolling down PCH like a bowling ball. And it wasn't so much coming from over the hill. The embers were literally going down PCH, like down the lanes.
Under the decks too.
Under the decks.
That's what we heard happened on the Costa, which is where I lived.
Mm.
Everybody was on timber decks raised up off the sand, and the flames started underneath, and it was the firefighters called it a shared attic situation, where it spread underneath all the houses before they could even see it.
From the street, right?
So you were on the street, and
But I'm saying you couldn't see from PCH.
so it was everywhere before they could even combat.
I find a stretch of PCH just before Moon Shadows very curious. There's a block of homes, right? About 400 feet that is just intact. And on either side, everything is burned down to the ground. And then right across from it, there's a 7 or 8 foot retaining wall. I don't even know if it's a retaining wall or it's a barricade of some sort or whatever it is, but it's a concrete wall. And I have to think that had a role to play.
So you're talking about, so if you're driving from here, you just passed Duke's.
Yes.
And then there's like a gap of houses that were lost. And then on Dog Beach you're talking about, there's that strip of houses.
Yes.
So there was a big suppression effort right there. There was I think a strike team that had some engines from actually inner city, some structure guys. And there's like a condo complex, like 5 apartments up top. There's an incredible video of these LA County guys that went interior and saved that whole complex because one of them got involved. But so there was a huge response, including a big ladder truck on either side trying to stop it. So it was going structure every hour, another structure lost. And some of my friends were actually down there and we're helping those guys from LA County to kind of stop that spread, and they eventually ended up catching it. So that was strictly because of suppression.
They suppressed 20 houses, and they did an effective job, but it was just that parade of embers that got past them, and suddenly the next beach over is caught. Is that why there's houses gone, a set of structures still intact, and then another beach gone? Is that why that could happen?
That whole stretch was because of really good suppression. I mean, there was a bunch of people down there,
Right.
and at one point there was a power pole that had fallen across PCH, and those people the resources were stuck there, and they were there for hours and hours and hours. I've talked to some of the county guys.
But then Dog Beach is next, and like the next 75 houses are just gone. So
Right.
like there was that strike point you said that was effective, but somehow it got past them.
Yeah, I mean, it's fire's not linear, right? It doesn't work in a perfect wave, and it's all about the embers landing in the respective fuel beds. And clearly, PCH is an example of that, right? There's no connective fuel from the landside to the houses, so yeah, just all it takes is one structure because of a deck, or it's in some plants, or an attic, or whatever.
As I drove down PCH, I was just convinced that the wall across on the hillside had something to do with it.
It may have, but I'm guessing
may have, but-
Keegan's analysis is pretty.
That was to protect the PCH from debris.
Yeah.
I mean, I figured they just had the ability to all station in the Moon Shadows parking lot because that's a wide expanse of concrete and asphalt. If you're going to park an engine anywhere, it's in a parking lot.
Yeah.
And that parking lot was a fuel disruptor, right? So like when Moon Shadows is lit, now they all of a sudden have a gap. It's like, okay, if we can stop it here, now this one structure, which is actually 10 houses or whatever it is, let's draw a line here and prevent this first one from going and try to, and they had they had a lot of resources. And look, like, I think one of the things that I've learned, especially post Palisades, is that I am really cautious about how I speak about the fire department response, the role of the homeowner, because I don't want people to think like, one, I don't want to be like, come off as like a bootlicker for the fire service. And because but I want to just tell the truth to people so they get from 0 to 1 to start that healing process, where it took me several years to get that understanding. And I don't want people, when I talk about, oh, you should just harden your home, I don't want people to be like, well, now you tell me, right? And so I don't want people to, it's a tough situation to try to explain to Arno, like, hey, this is what you could have done better, without me saying like, you messed up, right?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like I was in a similar situation, like when you were yelling at the fire chief.
You're still
When I was in the in that movie Big Rock Burning, and I'm saying on camera, I don't want to put up tinder. I want to not be alone again out here. And why were no firefighters on my street?
Mm-hmm.
And what can I do to influence everything so that firefighters will be there next time? And one thing was like, yeah, probably become one myself, and there's going to be one, and maybe others in the community with more knowledge, so I can be more effective. And the other thing is, as I went then through that training in the brigade, learning why certain firefighters did not drive into Big Rock.
Yeah.
Because the wind-driven fires that we have here in especially Malibu are different from wildfires that people find in other areas.
In the rest of the country. Yeah.
Exactly. So firefighters from the rest of the country learn about Malibu and the Los Angeles area, the fires down here, as something that is super crazy and dangerous. So now, and a firefighter, before he goes into a firefighting situation, looks at, okay, where are my safety zones? Where can I go if push comes to shove, if shit hits the fan? And when you have a firefighter from somewhere else looking up Big Rock, everything on fire, has no idea where the safety zones are.
only one road up.
I know where the safety zones are because I live up there and I know every road, but they don't.
But isn't that something that we expect that they should know? That there would be a map or some sort of a plan?
Well, sure,
That where we are going to get resources from out of town, potentially out of state, and that this situation would happen, and that when you're staring up and there is one road in and one road out, that you would kind of have a map to sort of guide you. I mean, is that too much?
You're absolutely right, because one step is understanding why certain things didn't happen, educating myself, and then of course moving forward, exactly answering that question, how can we prepare crews from the outside to be able to
Because what you guys are sharing with that, the Southern California fires or California wildfires have a mind of their own, right? I mean, they do what they want to do, but that's not new news. I mean, that's, from the Bel Air conflagration that happened, when did that happen?
63.
63, something like that. I mean, so it's well known, and wouldn't we be more sort of aware that in this situation where we have to mobilize resources from all over the place, that, here's our game plan?
My first response was, yeah, then let's have the Malibu firefighters who know the areas. Let them stay in Malibu so that the Malibu guys will be here. But if there's a fire like in the Palisades, then those guys, of course, go to fight the fire where it is. And then they, like Keegan said earlier, can't go like, oh, no, Malibu's dangerous. I'm going to abandon this burning building here. I'm going to go back. So now they're gone. So
Yeah, I mean, two of the captains that I know, one from Topanga 69 Station and 71s over by Point Doom, they were at the initial response in the Palisades, right? And so they were up in the Highlands area and then Castle Lamar area. So it's not like they're like engaged with saving structures in Castle Lamar and go, ooh, it's no over by my area, and they go hold the hose and stuff, right? It's a mutual aid, I think. So I think there's something that is important for, it took me a really long time to grasp it, is that the focus is so often post-disaster what we can do better in response. And if we can build structures, Big Rock, for example, we can build those structures there because there's good enough separation in a lot of Big Rock. If we can build those structures where they can survive the fire on their own, we don't have to send resources up there, and they can be focused on other areas. And that's the like paradigm shift that I saw, a couple of years after Woolsey, and I go, oh, so you can actually build and prepare homes so you don't have to ask or require somebody to risk their life to save that house. Under most conditions, on a day like today, if there was a fire, we wouldn't have fire today. There's going to be the most insane response ever, and you could probably sit in your living room and watch firefighters save every single structure, right? And no big deal, easy peasy.
there's no wind.
So
No
we'll
wind.
jump to- Yeah. So we'll jump to the other topics on the docket. But Keegan, before we go there, three top things that you'd want homeowners to do as they're rebuilding.
And I have a pre-question to that. Or maybe it's one of them. If you are a homeowner that was healthy, not prepared in fires like you guys, stay or leave if there's a fire going.
I mean, leave. Absolutely. I have personal stories and experience with people I know that, and a family member that I thought died for several hours during the Palisades fire because he stayed. And he's been through fires before, but it's a really heavy situation to just, oh, you're healthy, you're in your 30s, you know how to fire up a fuel pump. Yeah, go for it. You should stay. There's a lot that goes into how to adequately meet the need and understand fire behavior and understand all the threats, including just.
And part of that is also, if you recommend someone to stay and that person dies, you can't talk anyone into staying. You can't recommend anyone to stay.
Yeah.
And I can't. I'm not saying this because I'm on a podcast. Even when my close friends like talk to me, hey, so what should I do? Like, should I just buy a pump? And I'm like, you can, but like if you've never shot a gun, I just handed you a loaded gun, you don't even understand where a safety is or how to like cock it or anything. I don't feel comfortable handing you a loaded gun. And this is a way more dynamic situation than just holding a gun, knowing there's a hole at the end. That's where the bullet comes out. Everything from power poles falling over to, there's a million different situations that you could, put yourself in a really dangerous situation.
That's great if there's another question here.
Yeah, and we have to get to the point.
Look, after Woolsey, I had to evacuate during the Woolsey fire. And speaking with so many Woolsey survivors, I realized the chances that the structure survives with the homeowner being present goes up multifold. So I told everyone, I'm going to stay. And I told everyone, if you want your house to survive, you got to stay.
That's I don't know if this is an aside, right?
Yeah.
But the Friday before the Tuesday when everything went to hell, Arno came over to my house late night. We were just having a drink, shooting the shit, talking about a bunch of things. And the conversation went to, what if a fire came? What would we do? I'm not making this up. This is a true story. And I said, look, I'm going to, pack up my dogs, pack up my family, and get the hell out of here as fast as I can. Well, because they can't take care of themselves. The rest of my family is old enough to handle themselves.
They have sons.
But Arno was like, man, no, if I were you, I'd go down to your lower level. He's explaining, you have a lot of defensible space. There's nothing. You'll be fine there. Take your family down there. You'll be okay. And I was like, what the hell are you going to do? I think I'm going to kick my family out and have them go, and I'll stay. And, I think we had the conversation. We might have jinxed it or something. 72 hours later, that exact thing happens. We're all running away. We have this little thread, which is our poker group, and we all start texting each other. And there we go. Like 9 o'clock at night, I see a message. This guy's there. He's there while the rest of us are out. Anyway.
Well, you did hit on one thing, right? Talking about what you'll do during a fire. I think that's the best thing any community could do, rather than forget about it being a risk. Just know every day or every week, there could be a fire tomorrow. What am I doing? Is my go bag packed? Is my house ready to survive when I'm not there? Have I given the firefighters who may come the tools they need to fight the fire if it gets here?
I had the idea of the concept of safety zone without having any firefighting experience or training. Anyway, I figured what would safety zone look like, and in my back, I knew that in my backyard, even if the house on the other side had Reza's house, if that had burned, those flames would still not have been impinging on my backyard. So I knew that, and since then I always said you need to have two things: you need to be willing and you need to be able, and that means you need to be in the right mindset, because if you're not, and if you get overwhelmed by fear, and that can absolutely happen, and nobody can be blamed for that, then you're one of the people who dash out through the fire when it's actually too late, right? And really risk your life. And the other thing is you need to be able, not only physically, like my neighbor 2 houses down was not, and he died, but you need to be able physically to endure the whole thing, because it is 6 hours of holding a hose like this.
6 hours or more, 3 days.
Running around in the dark around your house.
So it comes down to not being the liability that the emergency responders have to worry about.
Exactly.
Really never put yourself in that position.
Exactly.
Can I ask you a question?
Evacuate, but make sure your house is, you've done the mitigation on your structure.
Anyway,
I'll always go back to that, because like, there's a really sad story about a guy who saved his house in the '93 fire, and then ended up dying trying to save the same house in the Palisades fire in the house. And I did it before. You know, I'm hearing this secondhand, but I did it before. I'm gonna do it again.
If we accept that LA County has the best fire department in the world, which I don't have any reason to dispute, I think I'd like to hear. Obviously, there's still probably room for improvement. Maybe the challenges we're going to face in the future in terms of fire are worse than they've ever been before. Maybe this was a fluke. Maybe it wasn't. Are you hopeful that, be it via technology or organization or strategy, that they will have a better way to fight fires in the future, aside from mitigation and prevention, which are super important? Do you think there's reason for hope that the response will be improved next time?
I think response will always get improved. We've worked at improving fire response for the last 100 years, and everything from satellite detection for early detection stuff to the wildfire cameras that are out there, to
Watch Duty app.
to the helicopters. We have the QRF now, which are the Chinooks. We have 3 of them in the area. The problem is that you're trying to squeeze, 99% of the fires are not the problem fires, and you don't even hear about them because of the capability of LA County to be able to smash those things out really quick. Now, it's just a little fire. Oh, it was only a half an acre. It wasn't a big deal. There's a reason why it wasn't a big deal, right? The big fires that we have here, the ones that start in those fuel beds, like in the Palisades, that hadn't burned in 50 years plus, right? If you don't catch that in the first 10 minutes, there's no catching it. You can't stop that fire, because especially after the first hour, there's no break in fuel, in 50-year fuel, to be able to, we held it at this ridge, right? And I think there's a lot of focus on technology for early detection and better helicopters and night flying and better apparatus and more water and all this stuff. That's not gonna, I don't think any of those technologies, if we were to fast forward in 10, 15 years to the next fire, I don't think any of those technologies would have changed the outcome of the Palisades fire under the exact same circumstances, fuel load, etc.
Maybe a heat sensor, though. There was the Lockman fire that was put down, right? Wasn't that?
I mean, there's a lot that could be said about what could have been done differently.
Yeah.
But regardless, if it was started by the Lockman fire, if it was started by something else, if it was
Once it started.
what I'm saying is once it started,
It goes.
you don't take us out of here.
That's out of here. You gotta catch it.
Like one of my mentors, Drew Smith, he always says, when it's Mother Nature's time to win, it's her time to win. So
So back to the 3 things that you would ask homeowners to do as they're rebuilding.
think about home density, structure density to your neighbors, and think about the building materials and the design considerations for that risk. So if you're within 30 feet of a neighbor, think about what that wall that faces that neighbor, what the materials are and the design features are of that wall, to that if your neighbor's house does get involved, how much more time can that wall buy you from entering into your structure? So I'm not a huge building materials expert.
How much time does that wall need?
At least a few hours. I mean, typically it takes a few, houses a few hours for them to finally collapse.
Yeah. My neighbor's house, 1.5 hours. So if I have 2 hours fire rated material, I should be
again, you're talking about like, what's the fire rated standard?
There's no fireproofing, right?
Right.
There's no fireproof house.
You know why it's measured by hours? It's so you have time to evacuate before it collapses. That's it.
And also, a lot of the fire rated stuff is actually for interior structure fires, and and he knows way more about this than I do, but so it doesn't spread from room to room and has time for fire departments to come. So building considerations, material considerations for that home density. If you have that home density, really think about what, especially those facing walls, no eaves, obviously. If you have windows going to double, triple glazed, tempered, all that stuff. If you're really tight, potentially maybe fire shutters. I don't know that much about the different technology of fire shutters, so that if that structure does burn, it's saving you more time. So that's one. But overall, the people that are rebuilding, I think most of the modern code will help that structure on itself. But that being said, it's what we call transient critical elements, which are the things that the homeowners introduce to the home, or the homeowner habits, like when you're evacuating, leaving windows open or skylights open. So you can have the most fire rated proof house ever. You leave and you forget your garage doors open, or you have a bunch of like firewood up against your house, and you don't even have any neighbors, but you have a bunch of firewood that you even think about that's right underneath a window, or a bunch of sports equipment, or fuel, whatever. Those are the homeowner things, the habits, the things that we introduce to the house that code can't fix. And Jack Cohen, one of the things he always says is, we've as a culture have learned to not leave a candle burning in the house when we leave the house. We always know, the candle burning, I'm gonna go blow it out before I leave. We have to do the same thing about the homeowner habits and culture around red flags for here is, okay, hey, it's a red flag day. Let me walk around my house, make sure everything's buttoned up tight, pull away the combustibles. And so when I go off to work or whatever, I don't have cushions that are up against my house that are gonna catch them from embers. So
That's great.
it's the homeowner habit thing. I think is that education's a big one. The structure materials, and then for rebuilds, I'm not sure what the third would be. I think just the overall culture of understanding, so that people are just more fire adapted and understanding of what the capabilities are and the limits are of response, and so that when it does, it does hit the fan, that people are willing to accept that they don't have other people to rely on all the time.
And the one comment that I'll make for rebuilders is, the pushback on zone zero obviously is aesthetics, but it doesn't mean that you just have to have sort of barren, kind of scape around in that 0 to 5 feet.
What is
be made?
What is forbidden?
Ember and training plants.
So can we do green roofs still?
If you can prove that the plants are water soluble to enough that they won't actually let an ember catch fire and take over, then yes.
So I'll explain a pretty interesting story. I share this story hesitantly because I don't want people to interpret it, I can just do that because somebody else did it and they were successful. So there's a house that we had done mitigation work a couple years before the Palisades fire, that when I was doing evacuations up in the Las Flores area, I went by the house and saw that this lady had a bunch of vines all over her house. Zone 0 says no combustible, and these are vines literally growing all over the walls. And when we did the assessment with her, she was like, I have to keep these. These are the aesthetic of my house. And you have to honor that, and you have to appreciate that. Okay, you're not gonna get rid of them. What can you do? And we said, thin everything out. Make sure there's nothing dead inside the vines so that it is a receptive fuel bed. Zone 0 says absolutely no fuel. I went by the house right after the fire front came through, and the house was standing with all the vines on there, but the vines were thinned out. And so that's the issue with Zone 0 that's really tricky, is that when you create a code, you have to err on the side of caution, right? And you always have to look at worst case scenario, but this house was in the worst zone. It's mid slope. It had 30 years of plus fuel, 0 protection. They had a little bit of clearance and stuff, but this thing undoubtedly saw very intense fire behavior, 0 suppression up there, and it survived. And that's the issue with Zone 0, is that they have to look at the weakest link and treat everybody as the weakest link. Yes, you can have plants in 0 to 5 for fire behavior, because there's certain plants, as long as they have high fuel moisture, right? There's a lot of water in the plant, they're limbed up, they don't have a bunch of dead debris in there, they can survive embers without burning. So
it's like a doctor.
But you can't code that, because you can't go, ooh, let's go within a moisture meter and test every plant and go, ooh, right, so they have to go, that we're never going to be able to code the immense amount of variables into what a fire-resistant plant is and not. And so people talk about species all the time. There's plenty of pine trees, like Norfolk pines. Everybody says no pines. There's plenty of pines that actually are totally fire-resistant.
The fire department used to give away pines.
Pines and
to protect from fires, and then it was like oaks.
Yeah, oaks are great. Eucalyptus was the thing that the Army Corps and fire department, like about 100 years ago, were giving.
Everything that is a Mediterranean climate, which is what we have here, which is
olive trees probably too.
Olive trees are great. Olive trees are great. Pepper trees are decent as long as the litter is.
Citrus fruit trees.
My pepper survived.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because the branches are pretty far apart. They don't create the.
There's no fuel. Like no fuel bed. Yeah.
License fire.
That's his arborist. You know, that's
All right, segueing into some of the other topics that made headlines. And I know, Keegan, you've been involved with PCH Safety a lot. This council meeting, day before yesterday, a lot of time was spent on it. Maybe just anybody who's sort of up to speed and what happened in the previous council meeting, it was a 4-1 vote, to share about what was going on.
It was
What ended up.
a planning commission meeting, right?
Yeah, Planning Commission approved the CalTrans 15-mile PCH safety measure, right? That project that's
The
funded by
$55 million project.
And there was a timeline on it that they needed to get it approved by November or something. Then somebody appealed, and so it went to the council on Monday. The appeal.
And what was involved in that CalTrans plan?
So it was a repaving mainly, right? That's where all the budget was, and then
Bike lanes, streetlights, and side roundabouts.
and also lights.
Yeah, streetlights.
Yes.
And sidewalks.
Yeah. We talked sidewalk. That was very.
Which obviously 4 of the 5 planning commissioners thought was going to be helpful and add to the safety, but somebody thought otherwise. So what was the
Was that about 4 and more than
why was the one in planning commission? Yes.
like anything that is proposed publicly in Malibu, everything can be done better. So there's always a voice that says, it should be better, or it should be, or that, right? So perfect is the enemy of the good in this case.
Okay. So what was the appeal?
I'm not sure. I just know that there was a big focus on the Pepperdine sidewalk across from Bluffs Park. And I think the main argument against that was that it would ruin the rustic or rural nature of that lawn hitting PCH, and it wasn't providing any safety because nobody walks there. I think. I don't know. I wasn't really paying.
Yeah, they said nobody walks there, right? And
Because there's
then
no
other
sidewalk.
people were like, yeah, because it's dangerous. You're walking right next to PCH without a sidewalk.
It is a beautiful lawn, and I mean, I bike a lot from Santa Monica to Point Dume. I was hung out on that lawn 2 feet from the asphalt.
Well,
I thought it was great.
I'll play devil's advocate, which you usually like to do, Luis. There is a sidewalk on the adjacent edge of that same lawn, so like you could see how
John Tyler, you mean?
on Malibu.
Okay, sorry. Well, we came.
Malibu Canyon going up, but then what about going along PCS?
I'm just saying that aesthetically, I don't know what it ruins to just continue.
Yeah.
It doesn't ruin anything.
And I will
subjective.
also say that the Caltrans response to why they chose that section to put a sidewalk was not the strongest response.
DVD or something.
They showed up one day, they walked around, they kind of drove PCH in a certain section, and they saw a couple people milling about.
Probably me.
So they said, okay, we can put one there because also our entitlements and our right-of-ways make it easier to put it there. Now, I'm not against that sidewalk. I'm just saying I could understand why there was a little pushback and questioning for why you were spending.
There's
money
another
on
thing about the sidewalks too, is that, so I was in a bunch of really early meetings with Caltrans a couple years ago, and I will say, especially after the 4 Pepperdine girls got killed, Caltrans clearly got a lot of political pressure pushed on them, and they put their best people here and said, okay, we're going to show up and we're going to talk to everybody. And I really saw a lot of compassion and willingness, especially to get around some of the bureaucracy and stuff to get stuff done. One of the things I learned through those meetings is how much aesthetic can change driver behavior. And one of the things that they share with me is that when there's sidewalks and there's some street lights, it actually changes people's behavior because it makes it feel like, oh, this is a neighborhood I'm driving through. And you see those speed bars that they introduce on PCH where it's like you're driving in a lane and all of a sudden there's like a bunch of you're kind of narrower, right? It's just to make it feel narrow, and it works. It really does work. It's really crazy.
Don't you think this is kind of the identity of Malibu? We always talk about this in this podcast. It's like the rural character versus the safe character.
Yeah.
When both, like, you gotta pick one or the other. If you want safer PCH, you cannot be as rural along PCH.
This is my
So
motto.
finding that midpoint.
There is a midpoint.
Yeah.
There is common ground. There's common sense. There's a middle that is balanced, that preserves the rural character, but is also safe.
The problem from the rural character.
And even if there isn't a middle ground, isn't it an obvious answer here?
Yes,
But Trump's wild.
but again, going back to the fear,
Duh.
fear aspect. Once you go less rural, it's impossible to go back to being rural. You can only go less and less and less. That's why they are so ferocious. But that's true.
But why do you say that?
Once you build 10,000 homes, you cannot unbuild them.
Some of our council members would like to do that.
No,
They're working
we
on
cannot.
that.
So that's
It's this thing of
you need to
getting the old
understand.
Malibu back.
You need to understand
Right.
both sides, and then.
But where do you want to go back to the old Malibu? Do you want to go back from old Malibu in the 90s? Do you want to go back from old Malibu in the 60s? Do you want to go back to old Malibu in the 20s? You know what I mean? So like, at what point is there a give and take here of clearly what we currently have is not working in terms of safety, right? And that's the willingness that I think we saw from a lot of people going, this isn't working. What can we do? Where are the gives and takes that we can, and what can we test out?
And what do I know about Old Malibu? Old Malibu is, for me, is me watching Baywatch in Germany in the 90s. That's what
you have to understand, I don't know, there's a lot of people who like me after
They shot that at Will Rogers and like Newport.
I know, it's not even Malibu. But the thing is, there is no Old Malibu coming back. There's just a different Malibu that we want to build moving forward in the future. And that's what we can influence.
Let me just say this. I learned on Monday that the kids who are running the Christmas tree lot, great cause, they put up lights to light their Christmas tree lot.
Dark sky ordinance.
Yeah, they have to take them down at the cost of $70,000. So it can be done to take down lots. It's the street lights. It's a little ridiculous, but we could try these out and take them down at a later point. I don't doubt that for a second.
Well,
Also, speaking of the Dark Knight ordinance, right?
Dark sky.
I mean, Dark Sky. I mean, those few streetlights in Malibu anywhere, do they forget that there's a 13 million people metropolis right next to us, which is actually the cause for us not seeing the Milky Way, and the streetlight anywhere in Malibu will not make any difference whatsoever?
Well, it's more about the animals.
Listen, on Friday night,
I'm a big fan of the dark sky ordinance. I think that just like with fire safety, there's a lot of like,
It's a midpoint.
yeah, there's got to be a midpoint. And I hate blue lights, like, the old school phosphorescent, whatever that, the old tungsten looking light.
Was that the criticism for this particular?
So during the planning commission hearing, that was the main criticism. The commissioner is really focused on, you're adding, I think, 41 streetlights in that 15-mile stretch, and you're going to ruin our sense of the dark sky. And that's what we love about Malibu. Yes. And that's what we in Malibu love most, is we can see the stars. And why is Caltrans going to ruin that for us?
But and also, so what was approved at the planning commission, CalTrans changed it a little bit. They trimmed off more stuff. They presented a revised version. What was approved by council was the previous version that the planning commission approved.
let me dig into that a little bit. The Caltrans worked with the Malibu Township Council, who were appealing
And Pepperdine.
and Pepperdine to compromise a little bit. And I will again say that I don't even disagree with the argument the Malibu Township Council made, which was if we didn't appeal, we wouldn't have even had a chance to try to reach a compromise.
So I'll find out.
But
But
they
they
didn't
was reaching wind India with Caltrans 2 years ago. 2 years ago.
This was right after the accident, the Ford McLaren rules.
Okay, so they worked on this plan for a long time. They went through the public process.
There you go.
Everybody had their time to make their, make promises and, claim and what do we need here. And Caltrans did their best to fold all that in. So then at the 11th hour to appeal it again, that's kind of nonsense.
That's how negotiations work in Malibu.
Listen, I just have to say, I appreciate Caltrans so much as a partner. I love that they're doing this 55 million. I want more in the future. I want to work with them to get more safety measures implemented. But hearing from the community in an open workshop forum, taking feedback is different from having the project appealed and then really having to sit down and
Exactly there before.
So it is part of the process. It was a little much. It was exhausting for everybody. But we got there in the end.
Going back to the council voted to move it.
They not only voted
Knocked
to
down the
forward,
appeal.
they took out the compromises.
Yeah, compromises out.
That
Back to
Caltrans
the
had worked
original.
out with
So
MCC.
then, unfortunately, you will have to be on a sidewalk.
Well, no, and
now it's opening it to
Malibu
an
Seafood
appeal.
will have a light in front of it, which is an incredibly dark stretch.
No, now the problem is because they removed, so Marianne and Doug voted for the version with all the compromises. So now it opens the door to an appeal to Coastal Commission.
But who's appealing? Again,
MTC?
As things are appealing again?
I don't know.
You heard that moment. The head of MTC said we never wanted.
I wasn't there.
Oh, he said we. Bruce said to him directly, was an interview.
I know, I was there.
He said, "Please don't appeal it."
It's true. Yeah.
And the head of MTC said we were never going to appeal it to Coastal Commission. He was offended that it was even suggested.
And then things got a little bit hairy in the audience.
I wasn't there.
And that's all the hearsay.
Listen, there were some other topics. I'll just say this: there were some other topics talked about that night that felt inappropriate to talk about anything else other than PCH safety, because we had 20 witnesses walk up to the podium and testify with their trauma from PCH.
It was incredibly emotionally charged.
It's like
4 hours.
And that he had children and
There was a lot of truth. There was a lot of pain, and that carried out over into the audience during the break. People who had pain had to talk to people who were appealing this whole thing, and tensions were high.
And we had our past meetings where we would talk about having lost our houses, and then other people would start talking about things that sounded like really trivial compared to that. And on Monday we were like, God damn it, I'd rather have my house burned down. Any
I'd
time.
have somebody die.
Exactly.
Right?
Any day.
This takes some perspective. Yeah. Perspective.
Part of why I got involved with the PCH stuff was obviously the 4 Pepperdine girls, but 2 friends of mine died when I was 19, I think.
One of them was a motorcycle in front of Norway's. Start of the Char House.
Not Char House, but the next restaurant down, Gladstone. Yeah. And so, and that rocked me when I was a kid. That was the first time, I lost friends, and I never thought I could do anything different. And then I was getting so involved with safety in Malibu through the fire stuff, and then I was on the public safety, and this thing happened, and I just, it's like, it's something we have to figure out how to change. So I kind of made a promise to myself of like, I want to see some sort of change here.
This is also a hailing run.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So this project takes care of half of Malibu, right?
Which
From-
is still, what is a 15-mile stretch?
I think it's from Cross Creek to Ventura.
Again, does it even take care of it? Most of the money is going to repaving. Like, there's so much more
It's
work to be
huge.
done.
I mean, their big master plan is huge.
That's the big.
And they, I remember in the meetings, they're like, oh yeah, this is like, 15, 20 years till we could complete this whole thing. And I don't remember how many millions of dollars it was.
We've got something coming sooner than that, which is the speed cameras, which have, I think, been approved.
Didn't they install them now? I mean, we've heard that for
This runners, but
They're
they're
very hopeful about those.
Yeah. I think they will make a big difference.
we have them in Europe everywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why he moved here, because he was tired of it.
That's
That's why I got an old car, which is the rule character in Malibu. You want to drive a beautiful old car without ABS and without airbags.
Headrests.
So then, but you cannot impose that on everybody, right? So,
Wait, what do you say?
you have to ride a very safe Toyota or a classic car. If you're in Malibu, you are more into the classic
So
one.
here's the very odd, you're going to live in the Toyota and you'll likely die in that classic car.
You have to edit that out.
Well, guys, this has been great.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, and thanks for the work that you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
I'm really glad that folks like you guys are stepping up and leading the change that we want to be.
I'd be a different person without you.
I would be a different person without you. I promise. I genuinely, that's how I believe it. I like, if it was just me and a couple of friends doing this, it wouldn't be impactful. It takes having these discussions, talking about it, so people have a little more information each time. So,
But you're someone special to take it from that little group of renegades to creating this, and that's fantastic.
thanks. Yeah, I mean, I credit a lot of my friends that helped build this thing. So.
I learned a lot just now.
Cool.
No, this was a great episode. I hope people listen.
Yeah.
Cool.